This is a dragon. Well, it's a lizard found in Southeast Asia. It's not a dragon because these two wings are not arms. Now, for a dragon to be a dragon, it would need these as arms, which means 4 legs and 2 arms. Lizards only have 8 legs, 4 legs, or no legs. So for a dragon to be a lizard, it would have needed these as arms. However, that's not to say there wasn't really dragons out there. I mean, you can do a search on Google. Careful. Google censors things now really badly. So I typed in happy white woman. Someone else had done this, and that's where I've got the idea from. Happy white woman. Okay, mixed race and not white, not happy either. Go to DuckDuckGo, type in happy white woman, same thing, and you get happy white women. So our history, from dragons to aliens, is being absolutely killed by Google. So from this point forward, I'm going to assume you've already watched all the other videos. So I'm just talking now about Anunnaki and dinosaurs. So we know the Anunnaki had a book written by a person called Enoch that they would tell him what to write in the book. Now, in the book of Enoch, it kind of talks as if there's dinosaurs, which would make sense because I believe dinosaurs lived right up until at least 2,000 years ago. And it's talking about the giants turned against them, and I'm not on about giants of giants as in human giants or giant men. I'm on about giants as in the dinosaurs that are giants. And then they're talking about the beasts, reptiles and fish devour one another, etc. So the Anunnaki, as described by the writings, say that they created man. Or they came here 450,000 approximate years ago and created man in their image. Anunnaki arrived 450,000 years ago, spent over 100,000 years trying to mine for gold, realised they can't. They decided to create a species from the indigenous species that's already here to help them mine for the gold they needed, and they created Homo sapiens sapien around 315,000 years ago. But they didn't just stop there. They actually carried on. As we know, they tried to make all sorts of weird creatures, as you see there. But what's interesting is they also carried on, and so there's this discovery here that was found to be the age of 130,000 years ago. But this stone structure or skeleton structure came and went. So in other words, it was here in a blink of an eye and gone. How could that happen with evolution? No, it was the Anunnaki created it. Space, the final frontier. So we call ourselves the third rock from the sun because we're egotistical and we believe that the sun is everything. But the actual Anunnaki in their texts write it from outwards to inwards, which is different from what we do. And the reason why they do that in their texts is because, let's be honest, they come from outside of our solar system. So to them, they're passing all these other planets to get to us, as opposed to coming from the center of the sun outwards, you see. So it makes more sense when you look at the texts. And they did, they actually did describe planets on their carvings. So it's not a huge stretch of the imagination to understand that back then there was no telescopes. So the only way anyone would have been able to do such a thing as this would be as if they travelled there. And that solidifies. In ancient texts, not just in Sumeria but also India, in fact, they called the flying spaceships that the gods travelled around in Vimanas, and they would produce fire and light, in other words fire as if it was a rocket ship, and inside this shaped craft was the gods. So as you see there, description of the Vimana, where they're housing. Obviously people didn't, the people that carved this didn't actually go inside and see what it looked like, but there's enough descriptions out there that people have actually tried to recreate the shape of and the description of what actually it would look like. Now in Baalbek there's this massive structure. Now these stones were put on after, but apparently, according to researchers, this was a landing pad for the Vimana. So before this was put on, it was just a landing pad. The Bosnian pyramid in Bosnia covered totally in trees and makes it look like a mountain, but it's not. It's an actual pyramid underneath that that's grown over it. Is actually 150 foot taller than the Great Pyramid. So it's actually, this is the Great Pyramid really, in effect. However, I had heard that in Italy there was another one that's bigger than this. Now, underneath here is cave systems and tunnels. And they used the sand, dirt and pebbles that was underneath to actually make concrete to make the blocks for the actual pyramid. So talk about eco-sustaining. Now they also used a form of clay which is such high quality. It's been researched by 6 institutes, the actual clay that was used, and they said it's the finest quality clay you could ever get. So you've got to remember that the Great Pyramid was blocks. I know people can say, oh, well, it was made using concrete, limestone concrete, and poured in. But just because they can do that doesn't mean that's how it's done, because there is a quarry that's missing exactly the same amount of stone as there is the pyramids in Giza. So whereas here there's no quarry, and the stone was actually from underneath. And also the Great Pyramid don't have clay as mortar. There is no mortar. It's literally block on block on block, whereas this one does have mortar, which is the clay. So there is a difference between the two. However, at the top point here, it's been noted that 30 gigahertz, I think it is, a 13-foot diameter power or frequency in the ultrasound is coming out of it. So 13 foot around there, which again makes this seem like it's another one of those power plants like the Great Pyramid. Gold. Yeah, I've mentioned gold a lot about the Anunnaki, grinding it up or trying to find the powdered gold. Now the best place they found gold was for mining was South Africa, I believe. I believe that's where the most mines were, which is where they also started to create Adam. Now there's a picture here on Michael Tellinger's website, I believe. Look for michaeltellinger.com if you're interested in the mines of South Africa, the ancient mines, not the ones that they're doing now. Here's a picture of people that found an ancient mine and were exploring it. And this site here, ancientorigins.net, says that, so again proving that there was mines, that 5,300 years ago, the people that mined the mines were of high standing. In other words, they were people that was, or people that were regarded as high positions in the community. But let's be honest, 5,300 years ago, what benefit would they be mining for? Think, what would they need underground as a caveman? Yeah, there's not a lot they would do underground unless they were making a house. I can't grasp the concept other than the gold that the Anunnaki needed, and it wasn't 5,300 years ago. It would have been well older than that. But obviously mainstream's gone with the narrative that humans around 5,000 years ago were at, just started to have a brain and started to do stuff themselves. But we all know different. So, yeah, so the gold mines are real. South Africa, look for Michael Tellinger. I actually get people saying to me there's no such things as these mythological creatures such as the centaurs because we've never found them. Now, all it takes is for one of them to have been created by the Anunnaki, just one. And then the statues and carvings came after. Now, you try and find one skeleton, ancient skeleton, from this, it's really, really difficult to find. It's like looking at a needle in a haystack over the whole planet, trying to find where that one was. There could have been more, but I'm just using one as an example. And to prove how little the people that say to me there's no such thing as these is, I will just point out there's this skeleton that's recently been found in Indonesia. And it belongs to a group of humans that have never been found before anywhere else. So they've only just found this in a cave, in fact. So my point is, what is? So I've mentioned giants before, and I've sort of said some of them can be really tall. Now, Michael Tellinger go to his site, michaeltellinger.com. He's got this bone. It's a petrified bone, well, finger bone of a giant, and I mean a giant. So I don't know if you can see the fingernail just there and the size of some money next to it. This giant with this finger would have been 70 meters tall, apparently, which is absolutely huge. So I suggest you all strongly go visit his site, sign up, register, and he'll keep sending you these fantastic bits of information. And that's the location there, I won't even try and pronounce it, where this finger bone near some stone circles was found. So he tries to let us know. Go visit his site, michaeltellinger.com. I have been asked enough times to do serious work on the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki, because the Book of Enoch is where we get a lot of our information from for the Anunnaki. So I am now, you'll be pleased to know, I'm now going to be doing these 3-minute deep, going into deep detail on the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki. So let's start. Now I'm using Wikipedia. Don't hate me, I do know stuff without going into Wikipedia, but I'm just using it because it's got everything at a glance that you may need to go through. So the Book of Enoch, I'm just, as I say, I'm using this as reference to help you guys. So Enoch was the great grandfather of Noah. So I've already sort of slightly covered that before, but I'll cover it again later. Now Enoch was asked by one of the gods, probably Enki or Enlil, when I say gods, aliens, to transcribe what went on. And now it wasn't just what went on Earth, it was what went on prior to even them coming to Earth. So their whole backstory. Now the Book of Enoch contains basically different versions of texts. So you've actually got different, like this version here from the Dead Sea Scrolls is the Aramaic. Whereas you've also got cuneiform, Sumerian cuneiform, and some other different writings in there. So as you see there, Greek and Latin fragments. So it all basically makes up the Book of Enoch. So the Book of Enoch, there's only 200 people worldwide, doesn't say it here, but I know this, that can actually read and interpret the Book of Enoch. Zachariah Sitchin was one of the most famous ones. Unfortunately, he's passed now. So if you are interested in this, you'll have to find one of the 400 people that have transcribed this. Now, they all come along and say very similar things from their own Now, according to Zachariah Sitchin, each person, and this is how the Bible works, each person that's transcribed the Book of Enoch uses their own background of what they've learned in life. So where I might say green grass, they may say grass green, or some other type of description for it. So as I go on about the Book of Enoch, you got to remember that each person, just like the Bible, have transcribed it. They've put their own stamp on what they think it actually represents, because there's no hard and fast rule of what a word says in English, for example. Please, no rude comments. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. So I know I said I'd do 3-minute videos. In the last video I said that, but really they're not getting hits. The 3-minute ones are literally 100 people if I'm lucky, whereas a minute ones, a couple of thousand. Now back in the day when I first started doing these, I was getting tens of thousands. But what's also happening apparently is people was telling me that they can't actually find my videos anymore. Even though they're following me and they should show up as they scroll on all the videos, different people's videos, mine's not showing up, which means I'm probably hitting the mark with some of my comments, and obviously the powers that be doesn't want people to know. So they're strangling me. So I probably will stick with the 1-minute videos just to get more views out there. I'm sorry. I know I wanted to do the 3-minute videos. Okay, so let's go back to the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki, as you know, live on the planet Nibiru, and their orbit was the elliptical orbit that goes around our sun every 3,600 years approximately. And there's a website here. It's a good little website. I'll just give you the link to it. You can pause it. www. If you want to go onto that website, you can. Okay, so what you do is you put your birthday in, and it will tell you how old you will be on your next birthday, and how old you are on whatever planet that's here. Obviously, they don't have Nibiru planet on here, but so I'm just, before I carry on with the Anunnaki, I just want to make it clear that although on Earth we live approximately 80 years, let's just say, so if you went from Earth and stayed on their planet, the Nibiru's planet, that has 3,600 year orbit, you'd still only die when you're 80. So you know, their planet wouldn't go around our sun once. You'd be dead in their terms. You'd be dead in, you know, probably almost like a day or two or week or whatever it would be. So, but that's because we've evolved to live 80 years. Some argue that we was genetically changed to actually live only 80 years, because prior to the flood we was living 3, 4, 500 years. But so if you was living on Nibiru and evolved on Nibiru, then to you on Nibiru you probably would live 80 years, maybe longer. But 80 years going around our sun at 3,600 years every one of our years would make you live longer. So just trying to reiterate that point, that although we would die in a week on their planet, if they came here, they would live a lot longer and seem immortal. The Anunnaki, come on down. And they did actually come on down, and what they actually found, and they wrote about this a lot, is that the ground that they walked on was hot. They didn't like our sun, and that's because our sun is quite close to us compared to where they live on their planet. Now occasionally when their planet finally gets round on their elliptical orbit, yes, it gets hot, but they couldn't stand our heat, and they wrote about burning their feet and all sorts of stuff. So the Anunnaki wore clothes. Yes. Guess where humans learnt to make clothes? I'll give you one guess. I know we all think we're clever and we done it, but guess where we learned it from? So they wore clothes, and in fact the women actually would have hairdos. Now I know this looks like a lizard creature, but apparently according to stitching, this was an Anunnaki woman all dressed up to the nines I'm guessing on a day out. So women had power. The Anunnaki women, although it was still a male-dominated society for the Anunnaki, the women actually do have power, which is quite interesting. Not power as in superpowers, but it's interesting because when you think Sumeria, which is the sort of, shall we say, the birthplace of where they arrived and first colonized, is now Iraq, and as we know, this sort of area here in the Middle East, women's rights are not adhered to as they are, for example, here in the UK. So I would have thought that, you know, these guys learned how to treat women from the Anunnaki, but no, I think they just decided how to treat women for their own power reasons. Now if you look here, this is the Anunnaki tree. So this is Anu. So he at the time of when they came down, he was the king of Nibiru, and he had, the Anunnaki did sort of inbreed points, but the King Anu, so I'm not going to go any further back at the moment, but the King Anu had a daughter as well as Enlil and Enki, but the daughter was a goddess here on Earth. We actually worshipped her as a goddess, and that would make sense seeing as Enki and Enlil were also classed as gods, so these were the princely brothers. Now her job here on Earth, as you see, wasn't just to look pretty. And look at the size of this. I know this is obviously a modern rendering, but look at the size of the lion there. Now remember, these characters from Nibiru were 8 to 10 foot, sometimes 12 foot tall. So just imagine standing up right now and looking down at your feet. That's how small someone would be. That would be their head at your feet. So this is why the carvings and everything show these giants compared to us little. Okay, so before I carry on with the in-depth Anunnaki, I have to address the debunkers. Now this person here is an archaeologist called Sarah Kroenig, and just listen to what she says, and I'm going to go through where she's wrong. And I'm sorry, I have a little saying that I hate thick people, and thick people are the people that's not prepared to open their eyes. Now, she's totally blinked, because the actual title of this video is Aliens Built the Pyramids and Other Absurdities. Okay, so let's go through this and make her look absurd.
That aliens from the planet Nibiru had come to Earth and established the ancient Sumerian culture in Mesopotamia. I have these conversations.
So someone had mentioned that to her, and
a lot. On planes, in bookstores, and in bars, people want to talk with me about pseudo-archaeology.
Yeah, not really pseudo, it's actually real archaeology, but you're not prepared to open your eyes.
Something that seems like archaeology, but isn't.
Or you're paid.
It involves making wild and unproven...
Or you're paid to debunk this kind of stuff.
...claims about the human past. Things like aliens built the pyramids.
Okay, so she's gone for the picture there of the Greys, which we know the Anunnaki are not like the Greys. The Anunnaki are actually, well, just like us really, or we're like them. So there's a first mistake there. Clearly she doesn't know much about Sumeria. And, you know, these tablets are in Sumeria, you know, which is Mesopotamia. So, wrong on that account, love.
Or survivors from the lost continent of Atlantis invented hieroglyphic writing. Now, most of us know that claims like these are unfounded.
Well, they're not unfounded, actually, because you've got the Dead Sea Scrolls that actually talk about where they landed, who they were, and actually covers it. So, and that's the Book of Enoch, which is made up of all these different things. So, yeah, the proof's there, to be honest with you. So they're not unfounded. Otherwise, if you're disregarding the Dead Sea Scrolls, then you have to disregard the Bible.
And frankly, absurd. Yet they're everywhere.
Yes, they're everywhere because it's freaking fact, you numpty.
They're on TV shows, in movies, and in books. Think of the History Channel series Ancient Aliens.
So where she was just talking about the planet Nibiru, look, this is from NASA's own website here. Caltech researchers have found mathematical evidence suggesting that there may be a Planet X. Now, if you remember my very first video, I mentioned Planet X is the... So the last video I was just talking about this woman here. So it's not worth carrying on whatever she says, because obviously if she's disregarded the facts, then whatever else she carries on and tries to lie about is just nonsense and lies. So let's go to another one here. So this video here, colossal cranium. So let's have a listen to what he says.
The ancient alien theories have been widely criticized and rejected. Why? Because their methods are completely backwards from how scientific facts are found.
Okay, so going widely rejected. Now, actually, it's widely rejected by people that don't want it. So in other words, the Smithsonian, the Rockefellers, any institute that's funded by them. You see where I'm going with that. And now, as for the proof, we've got here these skulls, and as we know, these skulls are not boarded, head boarded or head bound. These actually have different features to a human skull. So there's a bit of a proof there.
Instead of looking at all the data and evidence and providing proof.
Okay, let's look at the data and evidence of... Now, look, this is the evidence that they give us. The pyramids of Giza, like Egyptian pyramids, came blah 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 before them. They were royal tombs, a final resting place. Okay, no bodies were found in any pyramids across the world, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pyramids across the world, believe it or not. Not one body. However, the tombs that look like tombs, the sort of place that you find Tutankhamun, were tombs. So when they try and debunk it, they use this kind of crap here that basically says it was tombs. So straight away, they're wrong. So they're following the wrong information in the first place, this video here. And if you're just talking about the pyramids alone, Look at this. Even Sky News finally admits that the Great Pyramid of Giza can collect and concentrate electromagnetic energy. Now, we've probably mentioned this before on my videos anyway, where the power, there's significant power that comes from actually the top of the pyramid, and some of these still have it. The Bosnian pyramid does, where it's obviously a power source. So if Sky News is talking about that, I know Sky, we can't trust Sky, but the fact that they've actually even allowed that sort of information out there, then you've got these characters here that just follow the narrative. I know I'm going on about debunking, but
ancient alien enthusiasts piece together stories, often from very old and very unreliable sources.
Well, no, actually, the old information is actually from the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Book of Enoch. The firmament, basically, from what I understand, they say, people that say the flat earth says that this firmament is a solid object, impenetrable. NASA's been lying to us for since they sent rockets up. They've made fake claims that which now turn out to be possibly true, that there's nothing outside of this dome, and up here, well, outside of the dome, they say there's nothing, but of course nothing is something, and therefore it's space. So when they send a rocket up and they drop a pencil and it floats, that was just all made up by NASA way back, and they have to carry on making that lie now. But we know with our own vacuum chambers, etc., that there is such a thing as anti-gravity, and it would float. So it's a lot of aggro for NASA to have gone through to continuously lie right back then, and not just NASA but other countries, to lie and say that there's I don't know, I'm just struggling to comprehend their thoughts on this. To lie and say all this time, I would have, if I was lying to the people, I wouldn't have said, oh, you know, you drop a pencil and it's going to float. That's a lot of aggro to go through to lie. But also, like, for example, I've been told that the flat earthers believe with the dome that our GPS satellite signals that we get are actually on helium balloons. So instead of sitting up there in orbit, they're actually inside this dome on helium balloons, which we know there's wind that blows around and GPS needs to be accurate, and I don't know, just so anyway, so let's have a look what the information where these flat earthers get this from. So let's be honest, it goes all the way back to the Book of Enoch, because the Book of Enoch predates the Bible. So let's have a quick look now. So this is chapters from the Book of Enoch. I'll just read out a couple of bits. Now, if you, as I've said before, if you replace the word heaven with space, in other words, the space where Star Trek happens up there in space, the Bible and everything else makes so much more sense. So it says, I saw the four winds which bear the earth and the firmament of the space, which is space above. I'll just go back to this bit down here, because I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds. I saw the paths of the angels. Now we know angels is messengers, which is Anunnaki. So I saw the path of the Anunnaki, in other words, the route that they're taking. I saw that at the end of the firmament of the space above. I saw the end of the firmament of the space above. Now all that is, really, let's be honest, is it's our ozone layer, and they came in rockets. They didn't come in anti-gravity machines, so they would have struggled to get through this, our ozone layer. And I actually need your help on this one. So I've got a theory that no one else has ever mentioned, and you lovely smart people will let me know whether you think this idea is actually correct or not. So we're going back to the firmament. Now I think the firmament is just basically our atmosphere. So the Anunnaki came in their ships, and we know they're rocket ships because it says it in the Bible, basically, with the loud thunder and the fire behind, as opposed to anti-gravity. So when they hit our atmosphere, they started to burn up, obviously, because it's well, unless it's anti-gravity, you'll end up doing this kind of thing. Now their own planet obviously had dwindled in atmosphere, and we know that because they came here to mine for gold to spread in their atmosphere to help protect it. So they could quite easily leave their planet without having this atmosphere issue, but when they hit Earth, they wrote about how hard it was to try and get through. And of course, we've equated that now as an invisible dome over Earth. And then we've got people talking about hollow Earth, flat Earth. So, Halley's Comet has a orbit of 75 to 76,000 years. However, we only see it in the night sky for a couple of days, I think it is. Now, I asked someone, a flat earther, I said, well, where does Halley's Comet go? And they said, yeah, they don't really know. Because obviously, if it takes 75,000 years and we only see it for 2 or 3 days, technically it should only be a week before we see it again. So it goes off somewhere and it goes out further. So obviously if there's a dome, it goes outside the dome. And if there's, because the flat earthers say there's no space outside. So that kind of poo-poos that idea, I think. And also when people watch rockets go up, like Elon Musk's, what do? Just watch it go up, hit the firmament and come back down? No, they watch it go up, up, up. You don't see it come back down, which means it's getting outside of our atmosphere, getting out into space. But my point here is Sumeria had landing ports, spaceports, according to Zecharia Sitchin. Now, imagine, so this is where the spaceport was, according to Sitchin, and this is where the Great Pyramid is. Imagine if the pyramid was also designed to put power, some sort of energy, because we know that actually produces energy. Imagine that energy going up into the ozone or up into to our atmosphere and actually creating a hole which would allow the Anunnaki rockets to go through it a lot easier than burning up as they do now. So it's not too far from there, and we know the rocket ships had wings because of the Vimanas, the images. Okay, so the Book of Enoch, let's cut straight to the chase. They were totally aware, so Enoch was a scribe, they were totally aware of spirits. So look, chapter here, though ye were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life. So they was aware of eternal life for the spirits, not just their own longevity of life. Now we know they lived a long time, but eternal is something that we attribute to spirits, and there's the word there. So I want to try and show you the difference between spirits and angels, because in the Book of Enoch there is a difference. Obviously everyone's mixed it all up and said the spirits are angels and they come down, but I'm trying to show you that they know the difference between a spirit and an angel. So if you just bear with me over the next couple of videos. Okay, so here, then I wrote out their petition and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually, and in regard to their... This is absolutely following on from the last video, so please watch the last one first. So we was going back to where we was talking about spirits and the Anunnaki knowing the difference between spirits and angels. So I just read another paragraph there, but let's have a look at this paragraph here. And he took up his parable and said, Enoch the righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, in other words, Enoch was been shown stuff, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens. Now the Holy One could have been Anu, the king of Nibiru, and heavens is obviously space, as we all know, because you can't take someone physically up to heaven while they're still alive. So you have to read it properly and put space there. Which the angels showed me. Now angels are messengers and they are Anunnaki. This is the third part of this particular thing that I'm talking about, so please watch the other two first. Okay, so we're talking here that the Anunnaki knew the difference between spirits and angels. Angels were, to Enoch, angels were just Anunnaki, same as if I called a cab driver a cab driver. I don't call him human, I call him a cab driver. And that's what an angel is. It's a messenger. It's one of the Anunnaki coming down. And there's higher up Anunnakis that are called holy angels, but really they're just sort of like supervisors. So here's a paragraph here. I saw the paths of the Anunnaki, and I saw the end of the earth, the firmament of the heaven above. In other words, space. We changed that to space, and we changed firmament to atmosphere. So the next video you have to watch as well. Okay, to finish off proving that the Anunnaki knew the difference between an angel, which is just a name, for, as you've watched the other videos now hopefully, just a name for an Anunnaki or a job, and spirits. So here we go. In one of the chapters here, then said Uriel, one of the holy angels. Now, as I mentioned before, holy angels means the higher up jobs, you know, like a supervisor or a manager, that kind of thing. One of the holy angels who was with me. So they're physical beings, not angelic and spiritual. Now, if you look here, so chapter 22, I saw, in brackets, the spirit of a dead man. Do you see that? Spirit, dead. So they know the difference between an angel and a spirit, and they've said it many a times, as you see here. We've all heard of witchcraft and curses and voodoo dolls, but where did that come from? What's the earliest record of it? Well, actually, it's the Book of Enoch, which we all know predates the Bible. So let's have a look at what the Book of Enoch talks about curses. So here's a paragraph. And for you, the goddess, there shall be a curse. Now, they do talk about the curse a lot, and it's actually not like a curse as in a swear word. It's actually a curse as in they're going to curse you. And this is just a handful of descriptions here, but they do it a lot. They do talk about cursing people. So we don't know whether or not the curse is some sort of magic, or whether they've put a curse on someone and then sort of the jinn comes to attack them, which is possible. But they certainly believed in a curse of some sort. The moment you've all been waiting for, a real Anunnaki. There he is. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now look at this watch. So, okay, they're way different watches, as you can see. But here's the footage that was shot in a tomb in Iran. Yes, Iran, which is the same place, wait for it, that the Sumeria was. So that makes sense that a tomb would have the Anunnaki in it. So this is a sarcophagus, and it's apparently 12,000 years old, which, as we know, the people that's smart, we know the pyramids were built about 12,000 years. Obviously, mainstream say, no, we weren't that smart back then. Now, if this is a genuine Anunnaki in a stasis chamber, now apparently there was a couple of others that woke up and were relocated by the government. If this is a fake one, a fake video, I saw this about 10-15 years ago, so it's older than mobile phones, and it is shot with a camcorder. There's a hell of a lot of detail. Obviously my footage here showing you is really poor, but if you actually watch the video, you'll see there's a hell of a lot of detail gone into this. I mean, they could have just put a guy in a, if it's fake, they could have just put a guy in a bloody, you know, sarcophagus, or just, you know, some bricks around him, and we wouldn't have known any difference. But they, if this isn't, you know, if this is real, then it makes sense. If it's fake, they've done a hell of a lot. There's that watch thing again. It looks like a watch, but it's not. It's obviously some device that they use. So go and watch it. Now, the Anunnaki there, the guy, the king, we call him a king, but obviously they're Anunnakis, or a god, whatever you want to call him. So he is pale-skinned, which makes sense, because that's what the Book of Enoch and everything else talks about them being. I know some people say that they believe they're black, but there's nothing there to say that they're black. So have a look, tell me what you think. Just doing a follow-up, because some people are saying that this character here, which is an Anunnaki, is black, or supposedly an Anunnaki is black. I can't actually see it myself. I can't see sort of anything that resembles someone black. Obviously the picture's not great, but the skin to me looks pale. Now, so the Book of Enoch, so this is my thoughts on it. Obviously, if you've got your own thoughts, I have asked for proof on the other video. Can you show me some sort of literature, not just a website, but you know, like where it's from, somewhere like the Book of Enoch or Dead Sea Scrolls or something. If someone can send me that to say that the Anunnaki were black, I'll more than happy read it and change my views. But as it stands, my views are just based on what I've read from such things as the Book of Enoch, where they're pale-skinned. So the Anunnaki, in my opinion, obviously if you differ from that, please do a video. I'd love to watch it. There's no hate here whatsoever. I'm just saying, just, you know, do your own video, let me see it, and if I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to admit I'm wrong. But the way I see it, so there was 4 black indigenous species here at the time: Homo florensis, erectus, possibly Neanderthal. I can't remember the 4 off the top of my head. Now the story goes that the Anunnaki eventually gave up trying to mine for gold on their own and decided to create workers. So they genetically modified or artificially inseminated themselves, the women, depending which sort of version you read. Either way, they ended up creating Adam and Eve. Now Adam and Eve technically would have been olive skinned, because obviously we've got one white parent, which would be the Anunnaki, and one black parent. You might end up with something, you know, like an olive skinned, which would make sense, seeing as the Anunnaki were in the Middle East, and that's where we get sort of Egypt and the sort of not black skin but sort of lighter skin. So that, to me, that all makes sense. So I just thought I did a follow-up on the last video. So obviously, if you've got your own thoughts, please, again, no hate, no just saying they're one particular colour or another. Just obviously give me some facts, as I'm trying to do here. You know, we'll get to the bottom of it together. Thanks. Here is another possibly Anunnaki that's found in Kurdistan. This is an old video again, the shot with a camcorder. Now this one I would call fake, because I think, just looking at it, I don't think that's real. I might be wrong, just the way everything's sort of waxy, shall we say. Certainly the face doesn't give me the appearance. I mean, I might be wrong. The fact that the beard's sort of cut dead straight there. I don't know, I've worked with props actually in the past, in previous life, for movies. To me that looks like a wax head. Now when you compare that to the other one that I was already talking about, wow, see the difference? That one's got, you know, there's real skin tone and everything. So I just thought I'd show that. What we're saying really is the Anunnaki came here about 450,000 years ago, but 300,000 years ago is when they created man. Now if you look here, this is from the Express, saying that archaeologists are blown away that the Neanderthals 50,000 years ago, bear in mind I just said 300,000 years ago, they're shocked at some of the tools that the Neanderthals, which we know probably wasn't Neanderthals, it was probably the Anunnaki's tools, or the tools that they allowed humans that they created to produce these tools. So where the archaeologists are shocked that 50,000 years ago we shouldn't be making them sort of tools, if you go to the idea that the Anunnaki were here and they taught people, which we believe they did, then that 50,000 years makes complete sense, but not Neanderthals, probably Homo sapiens. This is a private interview with Zecharia Sitchin. I'm just going to play you a bit, because sometimes it's easier for someone else who knows more than me to explain what's going on, and then I'll just have a brief chat after.
And then he said there was a period, according to Manetto, of almost 3,600 years of demigods, which meant offspring of the Anunnaki, like the sons of gods. In the Bible says, married the daughters of men and had children by them, yes. And these would be called demigods. Right. And then only began the human civilization with the pharaohs around 3,100 BC. So
what he's saying there is that although humans were around, they didn't take power of any kind until the pharaohs. So prior to that, they were still the slaves to the demigods, and then still the slaves to the gods before that, which were the Anunnaki, or Elohim, as he actually refers to in this particular video as well. So if you want to see it, it's called Jordan Maxwell Private Interview with Zecharia Sitchin. So very fascinating, and corroborates a lot of the things that I've tried to be saying throughout these videos. Let's just talk about Nibiru, which NASA calls Planet X. It's also been called the Destroyer. It's called the Blue Star by the Hopi Indians, and it's got different names, but basically it's Planet X or Nibiru. Now, Zecharia Sitchin actually called it the 12th planet, and he wrote a book called The 12th Planet. So if you're interested, get the book. Now, here is apparently a pirate video of NASA's. Someone leaked it to the internet, of their projections for what happens to Nibiru. So I don't know if you can see here, that says Nibiru. Now, whether or not this is from NASA, I don't know, whether someone else done it, but the idea is it shows you here that it slingshots back and obviously passes the sun and Earth. So that's where it's supposed to cause the most damage, and then it goes off back around. Okay, I have this theory that I'd not heard anyone else say, so bear with me and tell me your thoughts at the end of it. So I'm just going to play audio from the Book of Enoch, and tell me whether you think I'm right. Now, no one else has suggested this, so I think this might be right. So I'm going to play the audio, but I'm also going to show this footage here. Now, bear in mind, Stonehenge in the UK isn't the only Stonehenge there is. There was many around the world. A lot of them destroyed, some remnants still there. So just bear with me and tell me what you think at the end of this.
Angel who was with me and is their leader showed to me. And he showed me all the regulations exactly as they are for each year of the world and forever, until the new creation shall be made, which will last forever. And this is the first law of the lights. The light called the sun, its rising is in the gates of heaven that are towards the east.
Heaven is,
and its
it's
setting
actually space.
is in the western gates of heaven. And I saw 6 gates from which the sun rises, and 6 gates in which the sun sets, and the moon also rises and sets in those gates. And the leaders of the stars together with those whom they lead, there are 6 in the east and 6 in the west, all exactly in place, one next to the other. And there are many windows to the south and the north of those gates. And first there rises the greater light, named the sun, and its disk is like the disk of heaven, and the whole of it is full of a fire which gives light and warmth. The wind blows the chariots on which it ascends, and the sun goes down in the sky and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is led so that it comes to the appropriate gate and shines in the sky. In this way it rises in the first month, in the large gate, namely, it rises through the 4th of those 6 gates that are towards the east. And in that 4th gate, through which the sun rises, in the first month, there are 12 window openings from which, whenever they are opened, flames come out. When the sun rises in heaven, it goes out through that 4th gate for 30 days, and exactly in the 4th gate, in the west of heaven, it goes down. And in those days, the day grows daily longer, and the night grows nightly shorter, until the 13th morning. And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night by a double part, and the day amounts to exactly 10 parts, and the night amounts to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that 4th gate and sets in the 4th gate, and returns to the 5th gate in the east.
Okay, so you see where I'm going with this. So I'm thinking that Stonehenge is actually written in the Book of Enoch, not necessarily the UK Stonehenge, but Henges itself, depicting the calendar year, which is what our astrologers say. Just how smart were the Anunnaki compared to us? I personally think they were about 150 years ahead of us where we are now, but they arrived 450,000 years ago. Now, they had technology, we know that, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to get here. But they also used swords, which you would think, you know, a race that's smart enough to be able to create spaceships to travel from planets. They used axes. Yes, I know we still use axes, and we've still got guns. So you could say, well, we still use axes for certain reasons, which is fair. But they also use bow and arrows, as opposed to, unless it's a special bow and arrow that fired lightning bolts. So we know that they arrived here in some sort of rocket ships. So why I think that there's a difference between us and them. Now, we use electricity. Nowhere really other than one image in Egypt, does it show anything to do with electric in the way that we know electric? Yes, there was the thing called the Baghdad battery, but let's imagine humans didn't discover electric and we carried on with fossil fuels and steam. Would we have been able to fly in 150 years time from where we are now? Forgetting electric, would we be able to travel to another planet? It's possible. I mean, we was on a trajectory. I mean, everything that we've got now, we kind of had back then, except for communication. That's where the electrics come in. We used to be able to have washing machines. We used to be able to move around in steam engines, cars, trains, planes, even Kitty Hawk, where they first created the first plane, didn't use electric that we use now. So if we didn't have electric, we could have carried on a trajectory where we would have ended up possibly being able to travel to another planet, but not using the electric that we know now. So that's the difference, I think, between the Anunnaki and us. I think they used different types of electric, you know, obviously the power pyramid, but not the same sort of electric that we use. So they are smarter than us, clearly, because we still can't figure out half the stuff they've done. But I don't think they were that far. They're not millions of years ahead like some of the other alien races out there. That's what I think. What do you think? Let's meet the Anunnaki. So, one by one, here is the dad, Anu, King Anu from Nibiru, the planet Nibiru. He's only came to Earth a couple of times, from what I believe. He is also known as Kronos or Saturn. He had 2 sons and a daughter. The sons were Enlil and Enki. They were some of the first people on Earth that catalogued the area, such as the first 6 days they catalogued water, trees, blah, blah, blah. And on the 7th day they rested. And Anu is revered as the god of gods because he obviously is the god of gods. So if you think Enlil and Enki are gods, then obviously the god of gods is the dad. And that's him up the top there, right there, with his sons below. So that's a picture of him. And he was a fair guy from what I understand. Let's meet Prince Enki. So he's the son of Anu and brother of Enlil. He was science guy. He was classed as the god of water, which is why his name is also known as Poseidon and Neptune. He was the one that actually suggested to his dad, hey, listen, can we create some humanoid type or slaves, basically, from the indigenous species here? And he's the one that actually created Adam and Eve, so well done to him for us being here now. Now, his brother would fight with him a lot over different things, and he ended up moving to Africa, whereas his brother Enlil stayed in Mesopotamia. Prince Enlil, now he's the brother of Enki and son of Anu, and he's a piece of work. Although he was classed as a god because obviously he's an Anunnaki, he was a warring type god. Now, he hated the slaves and used the slaves being humans and totally used them to make sure they worshipped him and brought him food and everything like that. He was right piece of work. And in fact, it's said that he was the one that brought the flood on to wipe us humans out, because he hated the noise that humans made while he was sleeping and we was too loud for him. Now, he had his own temple in Nepal, and that's roughly what the temple looked like. Quite a nice place. Wouldn't want to live there. Now, I have to say, this video is sponsored by a board game this time. It's a board game called The Last of Their Kind, and it's right up our street because it's the sort of things that we, that's watching these videos, you and I like. Have a watch of this.
The Last of Their Kind. A free-roaming board game like no other. You choose who and how many you want on your team. Each creature has different strengths and weaknesses. Up to 4 can play across a 6-folding board. Many different gameplay options, such as find the key, open the door, and get the jewel before the other players, or last man standing. You choose how many magic cards you have. Only some creatures can cross over the lava and water or pick up, so choose wisely. Expansion Packs 2 and 3 gives you a new double board and new creatures, allowing up to 8 players. You can also get a level editor with many different tiles. You can create your own layout, whether it's a lava pit or one long tunnel. You can make it how you want. Only available from thegamecrafter.com.
Okay, so just quickly then, yes, I was sent this board game. In fact, all 3 parts, the 2 expansion packs. I've played it twice. Absolutely fantastic. I would only recommend people from the USA to get it because the custom fees was 50 quid. I ended up paying for that. Well worth the price, trust me. But it's probably better for the Americans to buy it because that's where it's actually shipped from. Fantastic, highly recommend it. Thank you. Ninshirag, probably totally pronounced that wrong. She's the sister of Enlil and Enki. She's depicted with a cub, lion cub. However, because of her size, I don't actually think it's a cub. I think it's actually probably a real full-size lion, because you remember they're a lot taller. Now, she goes by another name later on in life, a Nimna. But prior to that, she actually had relationships with her brother, Enki. And they bore a daughter to Enki, or she bore a daughter to Enki called Ninsa. And also she is actually quite important because she was the one that helped Enki, using her womb, to create Homo sapiens sapiens. So she's quite important in the whole history of humans, and so therefore our mitochondrial DNA actually comes from her. Only a handful of people can actually work out that the Anunnaki were also other people in different locations at different times. So this is Murdoch, and he was also known as Ra, or Horus, and Apollo. Now, he was the god of Babylon city, and he later on in life he took over from Enlil as head of the pantheon. Now, his mum and dad were Enki, so that makes Enlil his uncle, and Damkina. Now, she was the goddess of water, which makes sense because Enki was the god of water, and that's her name there. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. Aphrodite. So important family, but Murdoch's history is quite military style, shall we say. I'm just going to address the people that say there's no space out there, there's no outer space, because there's people that keeps posting saying to me that where I'm saying outer space or heaven, which in the Book of Enoch they say heaven, but really it just is translated wrong, should be space. So I'm just going to read something from the Book of Enoch now. Bear in mind, back then they, if you're saying that these were not aliens, then they had no technology to look at the stars, they had no technology to cross up into heaven, or space as we call it. So I'll just read you a paragraph here. I saw at the end of the firmament, which obviously is the atmosphere, clearly, I saw at the end of the firmament the heaven above. So if there's no outer space, what is heaven? What is heaven? There's something outside of the dome then, and you're saying it's not outer space. Is it heaven? Are you telling me that everything outside the dome is heaven, or is it space? Ninurta, possibly pronounced totally wrong. He was the god of war and also ploughing of fields, and thunder and lightning, and some laws as well. So I'm guessing these devices here had some sort of electrical discharge, because as we know, Zeus had his thunderbolts as well. And the trident for Poseidon had these 3 things, so I'm guessing there's some electrical discharge from them. Now his parents are quite interesting because, wait for it, Okay, so there's his name there, Ninurta, probably pronounced wrong. And his dad was Enlil, we know is the prince of the princely son of Anu and brother of Enki. But his sister is the one that had their child. So him and his sister had the child, but Ishka, no, he's not a little dwarf, although he does look like one. He's still probably 8 to 10 foot tall. Just a bad carving, I guess. Now, he was the Sumerian god of thunder and rain. Hang on. But in springtime. So really, let's be honest, when we say god of this and god of that, it's just their job at that moment in time. So that's who he was. And his parents, let's go meet his parents. His parents were Enlil, as we know, the main prince that came down, and possibly Ninlil. Now, there is some speculation that it was with someone else, but we'll go along with this for now. He's a bit of a character, old Enlil, isn't he? By now you're probably working out that the Anunnaki were inbreeding with themselves. So that's the chart here if you just want to have a look through it. Like I say, you got the sister doing things with the brothers and whatever else. And that's basically because they wanted to keep their bloodline 100% pure, going back upwards from the king. Now that all stems from their planet Nibiru, where they wanted to keep their bloodline separate from other families. So that's exactly why they did that. It was a lot of fighting on their own home planets. But this is the Anunnakis, which is Elohim, as we know. That's their sort of tree. But if we go to the Greek side of it, if we're going to pretend that we don't realise that Apollo is such and such, and all these people are actually the same people. This is just an inbreeding chart again, so they are all the same people inbreeding. You've heard me waffle on about cuneiform tablets and cylinder seals and Book of Enoch and yada yada yada. Well, I thought I'd just show you how they were actually made. So if you have a look here, there's a gentleman showing you the symbols there represent letters. And that's pretty much what they did. They've done it in clay originally, and the clay would harden, and that would then end up being your information. And that's a cuneiform tablet eventually, once he's done the writing. Now, a cylinder seal is done like this.
They were commonly made of stone, along with faience, shell, or bone. Both cuneiform script and pictorial imagery were carved into the surface. These designs functioned as signatures of individuals or offices that owned them.
So basically they would roll the seal that we just saw a second ago, the cylinder. I say that Sumeria or Mesopotamia is a place that started pretty much everything. So let's just have a quick look. A mass-produced pottery, we can, for a fact, was done there first. The first writing, just happens the first place where the Anunnaki decided to set up was the first place writing came from. No coincidence there. We've also got hydraulic engineering, which is water irrigation basically. They did that there. A chariot, which was the first place, and notice the wheels on it, round wheels. A plough, so they were teaching us how to plough. Making clothes, textiles, which is what I was saying before, that they do. That's where we learnt to do clothes. They made bricks and taught us how to do bricks. Metallurgy with irons and gold and copper, etc. And mathematics. Enki at some point left Mesopotamia, went to Africa to help with the mining efforts. Look out for Michael Tellinger's books, etc. It tells you that they were there. There's proof that the Anunnaki were there. Enki was the guy that helped create the Homo sapiens sapiens. So our modern history, our modern information, we agree that the first Homo sapiens, which is us, arrived about 300,000 years ago. See, there's a difference of 100,000 years. This is mainstream media. They haven't got a clue. So you might as well just read the old texts and it will actually tell you 300,000 years ago. So it does make sense. And I just have to quickly mention fridge door alarm. for $12.99, sponsored by, go on eBay, you can buy it from there. Thank you. If you watch my other videos, and if you haven't, why not, you'll know that I say that there's some indigenous species here on Earth at the same time the Anunnaki decided to make slaves from them using whatever methods they used. And so here's a family tree of what was here. Now there's humans. That's 300,000 years ago. Ignore that line there. That is added because they don't know what to do, because as you see there, it's a missing link. So they've just stuck a line in to make it carry on. But the missing link, obviously, with humans is these characters here, Homo florensis. I'm not even going to try and pronounce them. Some of these were around 300,000 years ago. So some of these were the ones that ended up creating humans with the DNA or the bearing of children from the Anunnaki. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know what I'm on about. I thought I'd start with the product placement first this time, and this is for that board game that I've played now 3 times. It's absolutely fantastic. It's called The Last of Their Kind, and it's got all the sort of things that we, who's listening to this, are interested in. So I just thought I'd throw it out there. 1 to 4 players if you just buy the original board, but there is expansion packs that makes it up to 8 players. I'll just leave this playing while I explain what the game does. So basically, you choose, you've got up to 13 things that you can start the game with. So in other words, you could have 13 of these characters, and each one has different strengths and weaknesses. Or you could have 7 of them and the rest as magic cards, and the magic cards, so basically a total 13. And the magic cards will obviously do things like freeze the opponent, or make you move near, or subvert it. And there's many different game styles, so you could play all-out war, or you could play capture the flag type thing, or capture the diamond. You can do team games. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, so that's enough about the board game. You can get it from thegamecrafter.com. Highly recommend it. Gamecrafter.com. Type in The Last of Their Kind. Okay, so let's go back to the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki had so you know, a tribe in Africa, for example, they have what they call elders, and then they have the younger people, and the younger people do all the work basically, and that's exactly what the Igigi. They were the younger generation of the Anunnaki. Now, obviously, people like Murdoch. He was a younger generation, but because his father was one of the princes, then yeah, he became obviously more important than other people out there, other Anunnakis that just had children, in which case those children ended up being what they call the Igigi. And they were basically used as the workers. So they would transport the gold from Earth back to Nibiru, and so they're basically truck drivers, not slaves, but they weren't treated very well. And Enlil, who was their commander, wasn't very nice to them. So that leads into what happens next with these characters, which was really interesting. I'll tell you in the next video. Don't forget, like, subscribe, do the usual things. Oh, while I've got a few seconds left, go onto YouTube, because I do live chats, and when I've done live chats they go onto YouTube, so there's a whole hour of me waffling on about serious subjects like this. Here's a really great story for you. So this depiction is of Anzu, also known as Zu, which is ZU, and he was an Anunnaki that was a bit of a troublemaker, and he managed to persuade the Igigi, which I mentioned in the last video, watch that if you don't know who they are, to allow him on board one of their craft. Now they were stationed above Earth, and he started to learn some of the mechanics of the ship, etc., and managed to persuade them to send him down to Earth. So he came down on a transport ship and met Enlil and persuaded Enlil that he would be perfect to help them. So Enlil allowed him to work with them, and then he stole the tablets of destiny. Dun dun dun. And he flew off in, I think it's called the Birdwind ship, to the mountains. And the only person that went after him that was brave enough, apparently, is, and I'll tell you in the next video. following on from the last epic story I was talking about in the last video, the person that went after Anzu or Zu was Ninurta. Yes, Enlil's son. Now, he was the only one brave enough, or probably the only one with any decent weapons, because there was lightning bolts and there was huge battles. So much so that they depicted this in a stone carving, the battle between Ninurta and Anzu. And the lightning bolts and thunder and everything else people could see, humans could see, going on in the mountains. Now, Ninurta beat Anzu, took the tablets of destiny back, where they belonged, and Anzu had a trial and was sentenced to death. So it was the Iggy's that requested that they have some sort of rest and relaxation down on Earth, because they'd never been here. And Enlil said, no, you can't have any rest here at the moment, there's nothing built for you. So the Iggy got annoyed, and that's when Anzu, who I mentioned in the last video, or Zu, came over to their ship and managed to persuade them that he'll be their spokesperson, because he was a bit of a thug. And he said he'll go down and talk to them. So that's exactly how he got down there. So of course the Aegi at that point was counting on him to basically speak for them, so that, because their working conditions weren't great and they were really getting annoyed. And they got annoyed so much that they actually at some point or another decided to start a rebellion against them. And guess what happened next? I'll tell you in the next video. And a huge battle ensued in space between the Aegi and the Anunnaki. And yes, this picture's from the Orville. Don't complain that I haven't got a real picture of a space battle that happened so many thousands of years ago, which people do actually, but they do complain to me that these are not the real pictures. But some people say the Aegi was a different race and wasn't actually the youngest of the Anunnaki. So their story goes that it was a slightly different race to the Anunnaki, obviously humanoid, 2 hands, 2 arms, etc. When I say humanoid, Anunnakioid. And they nearly got wiped out. And that's where the Enki came up with the idea, because they didn't have these slaves anymore to work for them, in other words the Aegi, because they'd wiped them out. That's when they come up with the idea to create humans. And see, I don't buy that, because none of the Aegi was on Earth in the first place. So when they did create humans ended up on Earth, and humans didn't man these spacecraft that was used by the Aegis. So the logic just isn't there. So anyone that says that they were a different race, I don't see it, because the humans then would have ended up being on the spacecraft, and the Aegi should have been on Earth mining, but they weren't, you see. So anyway, my version, which I think is the correct version, is they obviously had a huge battle, and eventually the elders won, and the Aegi had their tail between their legs, but they did they lost obviously people, unfortunately, in the battle, because it got to a war. But they obviously they carried on and worked for the Anunnaki, and we know that because otherwise humans would have been manning these craft and not. And we know one of the only people that was showed any kind of advanced technology back then was Enoch, which is you can see that in his book where he's talking about being shown various things. So no other humans, and he was blessed to be showed these things. So the logic is that the Aegi were young offspring of all different Anunnakis. Okay, 10 questions for the people that believe the Earth is flat and a dome. So what's above the dome? Now, you're going to say the dome is the firmament. Book of Enoch says, and that's where you all got it from. Forget the Bible. You got it from the Book of Enoch, because that's where it's first mentioned, and it's then copied into the Bible. So the firmament is basically saying it's the atmosphere. They struggled to get through the atmosphere. Fine, that's true. And in the Book of Enoch, it says above the firmament, there's stars. So are you saying you want to take the firmament, but you don't want to mention the stars outside of it? You can't have it both ways. So what's outside this dome? Is the dome artificial? Or is it natural? Sorry, just trying to read. Halley's Comet comes every 70-something years. We see it for about 6 days over our planet. So where's it go? Does it hit the edge? Is there a little man down here in the corner thinking, oh, 70-something years is up, I better do it again? You see? Okay, to answer that one, please. Elon sending rockets up. Is he just sending them up for the fun of it and hitting the top of the dome? Or is there anti-gravity or gravity-less up here? So answer that, please. Are the planets and the stars all inside the dome? Because bear in mind, the Book of Enoch talks about the stars outside of the firmament, which is the atmosphere. So every little star that we see is inside here. The billions of stars we see at night, they're all inside here, are they? If not, what are they? Because there is something outside of the dome then. Next question. Are all the planets facing Earth? In other words, are they round or are they flat? And if they're flat, how come they're all just so happen to be facing Earth with the complete flat side showing to us instead of the edge? I can't get my head around that. So tell me if they're supposed to be flat or round. Because if they're round, why can't Earth be round? What benefit is it to NASA and everyone that we are on a flat Earth? Why hide the flat Earth? I don't get what the benefit would be. I just don't get that. If you can answer that one. Satellites for GPS, are they inside? So there must be, because someone said to me they're on string on helium. Really? To keep the 12 GPS satellites are on helium strings. So if you just answer those questions, one will be nice if you can answer one, but if you can answer all of those, that'd be fantastic, and I'm sure everyone will then agree that the Earth's flat. But if not, then I think what you're doing is, just my opinion, you're just finding answers to things that, just because you can find an answer to something doesn't mean that's how it was originally done. But thanks for your time. 400 videos and still going strong, and I hope you guys are appreciating these videos, because I do thoroughly enjoy doing them, and we know from previous comments from people that I am sort of not showing up on people's FYI page or whatever it's called. So if that's happening to you and you suddenly just come across me again, add me on YouTube. Look for Our True History on YouTube, and then not only will you find my live chats on there, which are an hour long and me completely waffling on about all sorts of subjects that you guys ask me about, but you'll also be notified when I upload the blocks of 5s and then blocks of 50 of them, so instead of watching them one at a time, and then you'll remember that I'm still around, and you'll come back and probably look for me on here, which then means you can carry on watching. So but please post and comment, let me know if you are still enjoying these. I don't know if you are, I'm guessing you are, I'm hoping.